How did you get that footage of Diddy?
I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources.
If Sean Combs watches this, what do you think he's going to feel?
Like, wow, this is amazing. I think he's going to say this is the best documentary I've seen in a long time. My favorite villain? I kind of like Diddy.
There are no misconceptions about me.
You guys don't need to worry about me getting revenge from Diddy. I've got 3 moves that make sure he'll never be able to come after me or my family. First, I personally reached out to the victims' legal teams. The real reason he's not getting out is those buried cases behind the scenes. I provided legal funding for 7 victims who had been silent for years and brought in the top criminal attorneys in the country. Second, I bought up every potential post-release business deal he had lined up. I planned this 2 years in advance, so by the time he got sentenced and still had hope of getting out, every partner had already cut ties with him. Third, I don't just have evidence, I've got backups. This is an entire minefield that's been buried for 20 years. I uncovered every secret from the last 30 years. With testimonies from the victims, we interviewed over a dozen people he tricked, threatened, or violated. You think that's harsh? No, he destroyed other people's lives for decades. I'm just making sure he spends a few extra years in prison for it. I'm not afraid of his people, not afraid of his threats. I know he's still in there fantasizing about a comeback, but the truth is,
the moment that new clip started circulating, fans weren't just curious, they were glued to their screens like something big was about to crack open. Because this wasn't the usual celebrity back and forth. This wasn't a messy tweet or a vague Instagram caption. This time, it sounded like a warning wrapped inside a documentary rollout. And the name that suddenly got dragged into the storm was one nobody expected to see trending next to Diddy's ongoing chaos, T.D. Jakes. Now, to be clear, we're not saying any of this is proven fact. This is commentary on what's being reported and what people online are claiming. But when reports start popping up from multiple directions at the same time, and the internet starts connecting...
My nerve talking about who you should be seen with. I do homeless shelters. I walk in prison ministries. I deal with murderers. I deal with rapists and killers because they're our children, our sons, and our daughters.
Here we are.
Anytime, sir. He's going to get shit open the car.
You break all the people who prayed, all the people who tested, all the people who had prayer vigils, all the people who concerned and sent love and sent notes. Thank you. Just grace. I'm not afraid to die. I want to hurt my kids. The people who love me, the church hates me,
dots like it's a full-time job, you get the kind of firestorm that doesn't die down overnight. Because here's what has everyone spinning. 50 Cent's new documentary drops teasers that feel like they're pointing at something bigger than just Diddy, and almost instantly you start seeing headlines and clips suggesting that T.D. Jakes could be under fire, allegedly, because of rumors about his presence around certain events, and because legal pressure is already swirling around his name. And once that combination hit, fans didn't just whisper about it, they exploded. People are replaying the footage, dissecting every sentence, every reaction, every pause. And the biggest question isn't even about Diddy anymore. It's about what happens when a powerful celebrity narrative collides with a powerful religious brand. Because one side is known for clout, control, and secrecy, and the other side is built on trust, influence, and a public image that can't afford even a shadow of scandal. And then the tension gets worse, because the documentary talk isn't the only thing happening. You've got people online bringing up lawsuits, old accusations, and new claims that are being repeated like wildfire. And suddenly fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and everybody wants to know the same thing.
Being 18, 19 years of age, this person is killing it, and they're saying to you, come on in, let's talk. And so I did. I went in, we sat down at a very long dining room table in a room that she had, and for 2 hours, it was unbelievable. Pouring of heart, crying, him talking about my father, we talking about these scenarios, and I inwardly just knew I had finally found someone who could get it. Someone who understood. I'm sitting at this table and for the first time talking to any man I got tears coming down my face because somebody gets me. Somebody understood what I was going through. Well, after sitting there and having this long discourse with him, I finally look at my watch and I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to go. I got to get this car back to my mother. She's going to kill me. So I said to Bishop, I got to get up. And I got up from the table. He got up from the table. He walked around toward the way I had to exit quicker than I got over there. And when I started to walk past him, he pulled me to himself, wrapped his arms around me and tried to kiss me. And in that moment, I literally...
Why is T.D. Jakes being mentioned in the same breath as all of this?
I tell you, to this day, I can't remember how I got out of that place. But I remember driving home with all kinds of crazy thoughts and what in the world am I going to do now? And I finally get home, get in the house, get in the bed. I'm going to try to go to sleep. And I get to sleep and get up in the morning. And in the morning, I step into our bathroom and my home phone rings. My mother answers the phone and she says to me, Wayne, it's Elder Jakes. And I get on that phone. And when I get on that telephone, I can hear water. He is sitting.
And who benefits from dragging him into the spotlight right now? Because if this is just rumors, why does it feel so coordinated? And if it's not just rumors, why is everyone moving like they're bracing for something bigger to drop? The conversation really begins when the documentary talk spills out of controlled press releases and into raw online reactions, because that is where things stop being quiet and start becoming emotional. Fans who thought they were tuning in for another chapter of Diddy-related controversy suddenly felt like the story had shifted direction. The moment certain clips and quotes started circulating, people began asking why a religious figure's name was being dragged into the same digital space as entertainment scandals. Again, none of this is being stated as confirmed fact, but the reports and discussions themselves became the story. What made emotions run high was not just the mention of T.D. Jakes, but the timing. People online pointed out that this wave of chatter arrived just as legal discussions around Diddy were already intense. Some fans claimed it felt strategic, while others said it felt inevitable. In comment sections, you could see two sides forming almost instantly. One side argued that T.D. Jakes was being unfairly pulled into something that had nothing to do with him. The other side questioned why his name kept surfacing in conversations tied to influence, image repair, and high-profile gatherings. The family was left divided, at least in the court of public opinion, and that division kept growing. According to commentary videos and social posts, the documentary did not directly accuse T.D. Jakes of anything. Instead, viewers said it created an atmosphere where powerful figures, past associations, and quiet relationships suddenly felt suspicious. People began replaying interviews, sermons, and old appearances, not because they proved anything, but because fans are shocked by how quickly public perception can shift when rumors collide with fear. One viral clip said a commentator saying, "I am not saying he did anything, but I am saying the questions are getting louder." That sentence alone was shared thousands of times. Meanwhile, supporters of T.D. Jakes pushed...
Renowned Dallas pastor T.D. Jakes is named in a federal lawsuit against musician Sean Diddy Combs.
It's filed by a producer that worked with Combs. It discusses how the singer planned to leverage his relationship with the bishop to soften the impact on his public image of Casey Ventura's lawsuit. Ventura is a former girlfriend of Combs who filed her own lawsuit in November alleging abuse, violence, and sex trafficking.
Meanwhile, Combs' lawyer is criticizing the raids at two of the hip-hop moguls' homes in a federal sex trafficking investigation. He called them an unprecedented ambush. It comes as we're getting a new look inside Combs' LA house after the search by federal agents. Carter Evans has details about what the feds have uncovered so far.
Guns, cell phones, and other electronics are among the items taken from the homes of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, according to a source familiar with the search warrant performed by federal agents at his properties in Los Angeles and Miami. TMZ says this video shows the aftermath of the raid inside Combs' LA mansion. Drawers empty, documents scattered, and safes opened and searched. Hours after the raid started, Combs was seen walking around the Miami Opa-locka airport, according to TMZ, which also obtained this video. Later, at the same airport, authorities arrested Combs' associate, Brendan Paul, and charged him with drug possession. In a civil suit filed against Combs by former music producer Rodney Jones, Paul was accused of being a drug and gun mule who allegedly aided Combs in trafficking. Yesterday, Diddy's lawyer called the law enforcement action nothing more than a witch hunt based on meritless accusations made in civil lawsuits. Could this federal investigation have come out of
back hard? They reminded everyone of his long history, his work, and the absence of any proven connection to wrongdoing. Some fans accused bloggers and reaction channels of chasing views by stirring up religious outrage. They argued that in the age of fake news commentary, being mentioned is enough to cause damage, even if nothing is ever proven. Emotions ran high on both sides, with some calling for calm and others demanding answers. Then there was the legal angle, which added another layer of tension. Reports began circulating that T.D. Jakes was preparing to defend his name aggressively
against accusations made by individuals who claimed misconduct in the past. Again, these were allegations being discussed in public forums, not established facts, but the existence of legal action itself made the situation feel heavier. Fans started asking whether this legal pressure made him more vulnerable to being dragged into unrelated controversies. The idea that lawsuits and documentaries could overlap created a narrative that felt cinematic, even if it was built entirely on speculation. People close to the situation, at least according to online sources, were described as nervous and protective. Some claimed that members of T.D. Jakes' inner circle were urging him to stay silent, believing that engaging with internet drama would only fuel it. Others claimed the opposite, saying silence made things look worse in the eyes of skeptical viewers. This disagreement fueled even more chatter, with fans dissecting every public appearance and every absence. As the noise grew louder, Diddy's name continued to loom over everything like a shadow. Commentary channels repeatedly reminded viewers that the core of the controversy remained focused on allegations against him, not T.D. Jakes. But at the same time, they argued that anyone mentioned in related reports would inevitably face scrutiny. Some commentators suggested that powerful figures often orbit each other in ways that are not fully visible to the public, and that documentaries tend to reopen doors people thought were closed. Again, these were opinions, not conclusions, but opinions can be powerful when repeated enough times. One particular viral moment came from a reaction video where a host said, "This feels like watching a slow burn. Nobody is making direct claims, but everyone is bracing for impact." Fans in the comments echoed that feeling, saying they felt anxious even though they could not point to a single confirmed detail. That anxiety became part of the entertainment, a strange mix of fear and fascination that kept people watching and sharing. Friends and supporters of T.D. Jakes reportedly expressed frustration, claiming he was being judged by association rather than evidence. Critics countered by saying that association itself is a valid question in the public sphere. This back and forth created a loop where no one felt satisfied, and the story kept evolving without resolution. The family was left divided in narrative terms, with loyalty on one side and skepticism on the other. Through all of this, the documentary remained mostly unseen by the wider public, yet its impact was already massive. Clips, quotes, and interpretations spread faster than the actual content. Fans were shocked by how little information it took to ignite such a big reaction. Some even admitted they were caught up in the drama despite knowing it was mostly speculation. That honesty only highlighted how powerful storytelling can be when it taps into existing fears and curiosity. By the end of this phase of the conversation, one thing was clear in the commentary space. No one was claiming certainty, but everyone was talking, and in the world of entertainment news, sometimes talk alone is enough to change reputations, strain relationships, and set the stage for even bigger reactions. The moment the conversation shifted from quiet speculation to loud online debate, everything started to feel heavier, slower, and more intense. Fans who had been casually scrolling suddenly found themselves watching long clips, pausing, rewinding, and listening closely to every word. It wasn't because anyone had confirmed anything, but because the tone had changed. People weren't laughing anymore. They were leaning forward, wondering why certain names were now being mentioned together, and what that could possibly mean. Commentary channels began framing the situation carefully, reminding viewers again and again that these were reports, reactions, and interpretations, not proven facts. Still, the emotional weight was undeniable. Viewers described feeling uneasy, as if they were watching a story unfold in real time without a script. The documentary chatter involving 50 Cent created the spark, but it was the ripple effect that caught everyone off guard. Suddenly, T.D. Jakes was no longer just a distant figure known for sermons and leadership. His name was now circulating in entertainment spaces that thrive on drama, suspicion, and unanswered questions. Fans are shocked by how fast this happened. One minute, discussions were centered on Diddy and the familiar pattern of celebrity scandal. The next, comment sections were flooded with questions about influence, access, and proximity. People kept repeating the same line in different ways, saying they were not accusing anyone, but they were confused about why certain connections were even being discussed. That confusion turned into tension, and tension turned into nonstop debate. Emotions ran high as supporters,
Critics talked past each other. Supporters emphasized history, faith, and decades of public work, arguing that rumors alone should never outweigh a lifetime of visible leadership. Critics, on the other hand, focused on patterns they believed were emerging in media narratives. They questioned why powerful figures often appear at the edges of controversies without clear explanations. Again, no one was claiming proof, but the emotional conflict was real, and it played out publicly. Reaction videos multiplied, each adding its own dramatic tone. Some hosts spoke slowly and cautiously, using phrases like allegedly and reportedly with almost every sentence. Others leaned into the suspense, asking rhetorical questions that lingered in the air. What role did influence play? Why did certain names keep resurfacing? Was silence a strategy or simply restraint? Every question felt like a cliffhanger, even though there were no answers. Family dynamics became part of the conversation, at least symbolically. Viewers spoke about congregations, followers, and communities feeling torn. Some people said they felt protective, while others admitted they felt disappointed just by seeing the headlines. The family was left divided in the emotional sense, split between trust and doubt. That division became one of the most talked about aspects because it showed how rumors alone can strain relationships without a single confirmed event. Online forums lit up with long threads analyzing timelines. Users compared dates, appearances, and public statements, not to prove wrongdoing, but to make sense of why the narrative felt so intense. Many admitted that even if nothing ever came of it, the damage of speculation had already begun. Others argued that public figures understand this risk and accept it as part of influence. That clash of perspectives kept the discussion alive day after day. The legal angle added pressure without clarity. Reports about defamation lawsuits and public denials created an atmosphere of seriousness. Viewers felt the tone shift from gossip to something more somber. Legal words tend to do that. They signal that reputations are at stake, that lines have been crossed, at least in perception. Even people who wanted to dismiss the drama found themselves paying attention once lawyers entered the picture. Some commentators suggested that the documentary itself was not the real issue. They argued that documentaries often act as mirrors, reflecting what society is already nervous about. In this case, it was power, secrecy, and image control. When those themes collide with religion and celebrity, the reaction becomes explosive. Fans echoed that idea, saying it felt less like a single story and more like a collision of worlds that were never meant to overlap so publicly. Others pushed back, saying this interpretation was unfair and sensationalized. They accused content creators of stretching thin threads into dramatic arcs for views. They reminded audiences that commentary culture thrives on escalation. A question becomes a theory becomes a narrative, and a narrative starts to feel like truth even when it is not. That warning resonated with some viewers, but not enough to slow the conversation down. What kept people hooked was the emotional uncertainty. There was no clear villain, no clear resolution, and no confirmed reveal. Instead, there was a constant sense that something might happen, that another clip or report could drop at any moment. This anticipation became addictive. Fans admitted they refreshed their feeds more often, not because they believed everything, but because they didn't want to miss whatever came next. In the midst of all this, some voices tried to bring balance. They urged patience, reminding everyone that being mentioned in reports does not equal guilt. They pointed out how easily public opinion can harden before facts emerge. Still, even these calmer takes contributed to the overall narrative, because they acknowledged the tension instead of dismissing it. By the time this phase of the story settled into a steady hum, the atmosphere had changed completely. What started as documentary buzz had evolved into a complex emotional drama involving belief, loyalty, fear, and curiosity. Nothing had been proven, nothing had been resolved, but the impact was already visible in the way people talked, reacted, and chose sides. And in the world of entertainment commentary, that unresolved tension is often what keeps the story alive. As the discussion continued to stretch across platforms, the tone slowly shifted from shock to suspicion, and that is where things became even more complicated. People were no longer reacting only to what was being said, but to how it was being said and who was choosing to speak up. Fans started paying attention to pauses, wording, and body language in unrelated interviews, almost as if every public appearance now carried hidden meaning. Nothing new had been confirmed, yet the
feeling that something was being carefully managed refused to go away. Commentators pointed out that whenever stories like this surface, the loudest noise often comes from the audience, not the people involved, and that pattern repeated itself here. supporters of TJ's doubled down, flooding timelines with clips of sermons, charitable work, and old interviews meant to remind everyone who he had been for decades. They spoke with emotion, saying it felt unfair to watch a lifetime of work be questioned because of online speculation tied to someone else's controversy. Many said it felt personal, as if their own faith or trust was being challenged by association. On the other side, critics did not back down either. They framed their arguments carefully, insisting they were not attacking belief or religion, but power. They argued that powerful institutions, whether in entertainment or religion, often protect themselves in similar ways. According to them, questioning proximity and influence was not hateful, but necessary. Emotions ran high in these exchanges, with each side accusing the other of blindness or bad intentions. The family was left divided again, not by blood, but by belief and perspective. The name 50 Cent kept coming up, not because he had directly accused anyone, but because of the confidence in his delivery. Viewers fixated on the way he spoke about preparation, leverage, and long-term planning in the documentary context. Some fans interpreted his tone as a warning to powerful figures beyond Diddy. Others believed people were projecting far too much onto carefully edited footage. Still, the impression stuck. People said it felt like he was pulling on a thread and watching the fabric move. That impression sparked a wave of theories. Some viewers speculated that the documentary was designed to pressure people into silence. Others said it was meant to expose a culture rather than individuals. None of these theories were backed by evidence, but they spread quickly because they matched the mood. Fans are shocked by how quickly imagination fills gaps when information is incomplete. A single sentence, taken out of context, became the foundation for long discussions and heated debates. Meanwhile, people close to TJ's, at least according to online chatter, were described as worried about escalation. Some claimed there were private conversations happening behind the scenes, focused on how to prevent the narrative from spinning further out of control. Others claimed there was frustration that even careful silence was being framed as suspicious. It was a lose-lose situation in the court of public opinion. Speak and risk misinterpretation. Stay quiet and risk fueling rumors. Media reaction only added fuel. Blogs and channels that usually cover celebrity drama suddenly found themselves discussing sermons, churches, and religious leadership. The crossover itself felt jarring to many viewers. Some said it felt wrong, almost uncomfortable, to see spiritual topics treated with the same sensational tone as reality TV feuds. Others argued that once public figures cross into celebrity culture, they become part of the same cycle. That disagreement became another source of tension. Friends and followers shared emotional messages, saying they felt confused and hurt by the conversation unfolding online. Some described sleepless nights, constantly refreshing feeds, hoping for clarity that never came. Others admitted they stopped watching certain channels altogether, tired of the speculation. But even those who walked away acknowledged that the atmosphere had changed. Something felt different, heavier, like trust had been shaken even without proof. The legal discussions resurfaced repeatedly, almost like a drumbeat in the background. Every mention of lawsuits or attorneys reminded viewers that words have consequences. Commentators were careful to use disclaimers, but the repetition of legal language still made the situation feel serious. People wondered whether the timing of these legal actions had anything to do with the growing media attention. Again, no answers emerged, only more questions layered on top of each other. Some analysts suggested that this was a classic case of narrative collision. When multiple controversies overlap in the public eye, they can blend into one larger story, even if they are unrelated. In this case, Diddy's ongoing issues created a charged environment where any nearby name could be pulled into the storm. TJ's, because of his influence and visibility, became a focal point for that energy. Fans debated whether this was fair or inevitable. Others took a step back and criticized the audience itself. They argued that viewers crave drama so much that they unconsciously escalate stories, even while claiming to seek truth. This self-reflection struck a nerve. Some fans admitted they felt conflicted, knowing they were drawn in by speculation while also recognizing its potential harm. That internal conflict became part of the emotional landscape, adding depth to what might otherwise have been dismissed as gossip. The reactions of younger viewers also stood out. Many said they were learning in real time how quickly narratives can form and how hard it is to separate fact from commentary. They watched adults argue fiercely over incomplete information and felt disillusioned. Others, however, leaned fully into the drama, treating it like serialized entertainment. That contrast highlighted a generational divide in how stories like this are consumed. As days passed, the conversation did not fade, it evolved. The initial shock gave way to analysis, and analysis gave way to fatigue, but curiosity kept pulling people back. Every new post, every reaction video, every cautious statement felt like another piece of a puzzle that might never be completed. Fans are shocked not by what has been revealed, but by how much remains unknown.
By this point, the story had taken on a life of its own. It was no longer just about a documentary or a set of rumors. It had become a reflection of how quickly trust can be questioned and how easily influence can become suspect. Nothing concrete had emerged, yet the emotional impact was undeniable. The stage was set for even deeper twists, not because facts had changed, but because perception had. As the narrative pushed forward, the pressure began to show in subtler ways, especially in how people interpreted silence and body language. Every appearance, every absence, every carefully chosen word suddenly felt loaded. Fans started saying things like, "It's not what he's saying, it's what he's not saying," and that mindset spread fast. Even neutral moments were being read like clues in a mystery, and once that happens, no move feels harmless anymore. Commentary creators leaned into this tension by recreating scenes through storytelling. They imagined private conversations, closed-door meetings, and tense phone calls that may or may not have happened, always reminding viewers that this was speculation based on reports and reactions. Still, the effect was powerful. Viewers could almost picture advisors warning about optics, lawyers stressing caution, and inner circles debating whether to respond or wait it out. The drama did not need confirmation to feel real, because the emotions attached to it already were. Fans are shocked by how quickly loyalty became a talking point. Some people said they felt betrayed just by seeing the headlines, even though they admitted they had no proof of wrongdoing. Others pushed back hard, saying that loyalty should not be so fragile that it collapses under rumor. This clash revealed something deeper. It was not only about one figure or one documentary. It was about how much faith people place in public personas, and how destabilizing it feels when those personas are questioned. The reactions from congregations and communities were described as mixed and emotional. According to online discussions, some members reportedly closed ranks, choosing to trust leadership and ignore outside noise. Others quietly expressed discomfort, not because they believed the allegations, but because they were tired of uncertainty. That quiet discomfort mattered because it showed how even unproven narratives can create distance and doubt over time. Meanwhile, entertainment commentators kept drawing parallels to past scandals. They reminded viewers of other moments when respected figures were suddenly pulled into controversy through association alone. Sometimes those stories ended with full vindication. Other times they ended with reputations permanently altered. These comparisons added weight to the current situation, making it feel like history might repeat itself, even if the circumstances were different. The Diddy angle continued to loom in the background, acting like a constant reminder of why the environment was so volatile. Every new development in his case seemed to reactivate discussions around everyone else mentioned in the same breath. Some viewers argued that this was unfair spillover. Others said it was unavoidable when power and influence intersect. Either way, the connection kept the story alive because it tied ongoing developments to unresolved questions. Dialogue-driven segments in commentary videos imagined conversations between fans themselves. One voice would say, "I am not saying he did anything, but why is his name always there?" While another would respond, "Because the internet refuses to leave anything alone." These imagined exchanges mirrored real comment sections, where people talked in circles, each convinced they were being reasonable. The family was left divided emotionally, with empathy on one side and skepticism on the other, neither willing to fully give ground. Some viewers began to question the role of documentaries in modern culture. They argued that documentaries are no longer just about presenting information, but about shaping it. Narratives and emotions. Even when they do not accuse directly, they can imply, suggest, and frame stories in ways that ripple outward. This belief made some fans more critical, not just of the content, but of how they themselves consumed it. Others defended the documentary format, saying it simply reflects reality as it is perceived, not as it is proven. They argued that suppressing discussion out of fear would be worse than allowing open commentary. This debate added another layer to the drama because it turned the audience inward, forcing people to examine their own values about truth, caution, and curiosity. There were also moments of fatigue. Some fans admitted they were exhausted by the constant speculation and wished for clarity, one way or the other. They wanted a statement, a resolution, something solid to hold on to. Instead, they got more analysis, more opinions, and more emotional reactions. That lack of closure made the situation feel endless, like a season of reality TV that keeps teasing a reveal that never quite comes. Social media trends reflected this emotional cycle. Hashtags surged and faded, only to return days later when a new clip or comment reignited interest. The story refused to stay still. Even when nothing new happened, people kept revisiting old points, finding new angles to discuss. This persistence showed how deeply the narrative had embedded itself in public consciousness. Some commentators suggested that this was the real impact of the controversy. Not legal outcomes, not confirmed facts, but erosion. Erosion of certainty, of comfort, of the simple belief that some figures exist outside the chaos of celebrity drama. That idea resonated strongly especially with viewers who had grown up seeing religious leaders as separate from entertainment scandals. Watching those worlds collide felt unsettling, even if nothing concrete was ever proven. As speculation continued, a few voices called for empathy above all else. They reminded audiences that behind every headline are real people, families, and communities dealing with stress and scrutiny. They argued that entertainment should not come at the cost of compassion. While this message gained some support, it did not slow the momentum much. Drama, once in motion, is hard to stop. By this stage, the narrative had matured into something darker and more introspective. It was no longer just about shock or curiosity. It was about trust, influence, and the cost of living under constant observation. Nothing definitive had emerged, but the emotional consequences were already unfolding, shaping how people spoke, believed, and reacted long before any resolution appeared. As the conversation reached this stage, the energy shifted again, not louder, but heavier, like everyone involved could feel the weight of what had been unleashed. The drama was no longer driven by new clips or fresh rumors, but by reflection. People began asking themselves how a story built on reports, reactions, and alleged connections had managed to consume so much emotional space. And yet, even with that awareness, the discussion refused to die. Fans started noticing how careful language had become. Words like allegedly, reportedly, and according to sources were everywhere, almost like protective shields. Commentators repeated them deliberately, aware of the line they could not cross. Still, the repetition did not weaken the impact. If anything, it made the situation feel more serious, as if everyone knew they were walking through a legal and moral minefield. Emotions ran high, but restraint hovered over every sentence. Some viewers began focusing on the human toll of it all. They spoke about stress, anxiety, and the feeling of being watched that comes with public scrutiny. Even those who believed T.D. Jakes had done nothing wrong admitted that the pressure alone could be overwhelming. Others said this was the price of influence, that visibility always comes with risk. This disagreement revealed a deeper divide about responsibility and fairness in public life. The family was left divided again in a symbolic sense, as audiences split between those calling for patience and those demanding transparency. Patient supporters argued that time reveals truth better than speculation ever could. Transparency advocates countered that silence allows narratives to harden unchecked. Neither side fully convinced the other, and the debate continued in loops, fueled by emotion rather than evidence. Meanwhile, the broader cultural conversation widened. People started talking about how quickly society consumes controversy, how little time is given for facts to emerge before judgments form. Some compared it to past moments where reputations were damaged long before investigations concluded. Others argued that without public pressure, powerful figures would never be questioned at all. This tension between caution and accountability became one of the most compelling elements of the story.
Diddy's situation remained a constant reference point, not because of new developments, but because it symbolized the environment of suspicion surrounding everything. Commentators reminded viewers that unresolved cases create shockwaves that affect everyone nearby. In that sense, T.D. Jakes became less of a central figure and more of a symbol of how far those shockwaves can travel. Fans are shocked by how indirect involvement, even alleged, can pull someone into the center of a storm. Some voices suggested that the story had already reached its peak. They believed interest would eventually fade, as audiences moved on to the next headline. Others disagreed, saying this kind of narrative lingers because it touches on deeper fears about trust, morality, and power. The lack of resolution ensured that people would keep returning, hoping for clarity that might never fully come. There were also moments of reconciliation in the discourse. A few commentators acknowledged that both sides had valid concerns. It was reasonable to ask questions, they said, and equally reasonable to demand fairness. This balanced approach resonated with viewers who felt torn, caught between curiosity and discomfort. For a brief moment, the conversation slowed, taking on a more thoughtful tone. But the pause did not last long. New reaction videos, opinion pieces, and speculative threads continued to surface, each reframing the same information in slightly different ways. Repetition became a force of its own. Even when nothing new was added, the act of retelling kept emotions alive. People debated not because they expected answers, but because debate itself had become the outlet. What stood out most was how the narrative ended up reflecting the audience back to itself. Viewers saw their own tendencies mirrored in the chaos, the urge to assume, to defend, to question, to dramatize. Some admitted they felt uncomfortable recognizing these patterns in themselves. Others embraced the drama fully, treating it as entertainment detached from real consequences. That split highlighted the complexity of consuming stories like this in the digital age. As days turned into weeks, the intensity gradually softened, not disappearing but settling into a background hum.
The initial shock was gone, replaced by cautious watchfulness. People still paid attention, still discussed, but with less urgency. The story had become part of the larger media landscape, one thread among many, though its emotional residue remained. In the end, nothing concrete had been proven, and nothing definitive had been resolved. What remained was a cautionary tale about how quickly narratives can grow and how deeply they can affect those involved, even when built on commentary alone. The situation left many viewers more skeptical, more aware of how stories are shaped and shared. And perhaps that was the lasting impact. Not a verdict, not a revelation, but a heightened awareness of the power of suggestion, the speed of speculation, and the fragile line between reporting, commentary, and imagination. As the noise slowly faded, one thing was clear to everyone watching. In a world driven by headlines and reactions, sometimes the loudest consequences arrive long before the truth ever does. So now the question is back in your hands. After hearing all of this commentary, all of these reports, reactions, and alleged connections, what do you really think is going on here? Is this just another example of the internet taking fragments of information and turning them into a full-blown narrative? Or do you believe these stories are surfacing for a reason that has not fully revealed itself yet? Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and opinions are clearly split, but your perspective matters just as anyone else's. This is exactly why conversations like this keep dominating timelines, not because everything is proven, but because uncertainty creates debate. Some people feel strongly that T.D. Jakes is being unfairly pulled into drama that does not belong to him. Others believe powerful figures should always be questioned when their names appear in controversial reports. Neither side has all the answers, and that tension is what keeps the story alive. Now we want to hear directly from you. Do you think documentaries and commentary videos are simply reflecting what is already out there, or do they actually shape how people feel and react before facts are clear? Do you believe silence protects reputations, or does it leave too much room for speculation? And where do you personally draw the line between curiosity and judgment? If you found this breakdown thought-provoking, make sure to support the channel by liking this video. It helps more than you might think. Subscribe if you want to stay updated on ongoing stories like this, where media, influence, and public perception collide. And most importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments. Say exactly where you stand, respectfully, because the
conversation is far from over. Keep watching closely, stay critical, and remember to question everything you hear, including commentary like this.